objectives on the board today. Where we're going, we're starting module 20B. Okay, how we're going to win the supply line battle. Okay, obviously we've already started shipping stuff across the Atlantic. Okay, but guys, staggering number of ships are going to be lost, and so we've got to figure out a way to keep our supply lines open across the Atlantic. Okay, so that'll take up part of today. And then where do we start once we go on the offensive? Okay, we are not ready for war. We're not. Okay, now we've been building ships, we've been building planes, we started the draft, but we're not ready. Okay, so it's going to be, guys, we won't see action in Europe until November of 42. So a full 11 months after Pearl Harbor, we won't see combat operations in Europe. Okay, which, if you recall, the Atlantic Charter between Churchill and Roosevelt, they agreed that once we got in, Europe would be the focus first, and then we would deal with the Pacific. Okay, there are certain things we are going to have to do in the Pacific. What we call an active defense, which I will introduce at the end of class today. Okay, so the Battle of the Atlantic. All right, I got this cool thing going here. Yeah, check that out. All right. Wow. Yes. The stuff you learn in graduate school. Okay. The end of the beginning. Okay, so guys, like I said, not much happened in the year 1942 except getting ready for war, right? So at the end of 1942, guys, Winston Churchill braves the Atlantic once again. And he is invited by Roosevelt to address a joint session of the U.S. Congress. So Churchill in front of Congress. And he says this. He says, this is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end of the beginning. Okay. So we're in a much better position than we are at the end of 1942 than we were at the end of 1941. Now we've got to go on the offensive. Okay, but we've got to clear the Atlantic first. And so, where there's a will, there's a way. And again, we're going to call upon smart people to figure some stuff out here. Okay. So the Battle of the Atlantic, which roughly goes from mid-42 to mid-43. German submarines are decimating our shipping lanes. Okay, just to give you an example here, in May of 1942 alone, 120 ships were sunk that month, which is 4 a day, basically. Okay, this is food, this is weapons, this is fuel, medical supplies, all kinds of stuff that is sinking to the bottom of the Atlantic. Now, these German subs would travel and attack in what were called wolf packs. Okay? And our job is to turn the tables. Turn those wolf packs to hunted dogs. So how are we going to do that? Well, we got to find those son of a guns, and we got to take them out. They're hiding underwater. So, like we did in the air, we will do in the sea. We will create sonar. Now, the animal kingdom, they use this. Whales use this. Dolphins use this. Yes? So instead of radio detecting and ranging, we'll call this sound navigation ranging. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever seen a submarine movie or, movies that involve sonar, but they send out a ping. That ping travels through the water, hits an object, and bounces back. Now, conceivably, guys, you could use sonar and find a large blue whale, yes, and kill the whale, thinking it's a sub. Sure that happened. But hopefully you're seeing a sub. Now, once you locate the submarine and its depth, okay, how are we going to take this submarine out? Once we can find them. Yeah, that's going to become the preferred method, is depth charges. Now, you could use torpedoes, right? Torpedo's like a bullet, right? It's got it, it either hits a target or it doesn't hit its target. Okay, depth charges detonate at a certain depth of water. You can set the depth charge to go off at certain depths. So if you know roughly the location and the depth of the sub, you can throw a bunch of depth charges off the back of a destroyer, and hopefully it's going to come close to hitting one or hitting a sub. Now, you guys have all swam in the deep end before? Like at 10 feet, and you feel the pressure in your ears, right? So if you're hundreds of feet below the surface, there's a lot of pressure under the water, right? And so you don't actually have to have a direct hit here. You've got to come close to it. And that pressure from that explosion underwater can crack the hull of a submarine. And if your submarine hull is cracked, what do you have to do? You're generally going to have to surface. And a surfaced submarine is a sitting duck, or a lame duck, if you will. Sorry, can't help myself. All right. So this is what depth charges. This is from a video game, okay? So you got the subs, and you start dropping these depth charges. Now, you guys have probably never seen one of these before, because depth charges kind of look like these, but yeah, you've probably seen them. You guys ever seen a keg of beer before?
Yeah.
Once.
I know my audience. Come on, I know that, right? You guys have been to Catholic weddings, okay? All right. Or on a Friday night somewhere. I don't know. Okay. But anyhow, guys, it looks like a keg of beer, okay? And it's got this explosion. You drop it off the back of the destroyer, and it sinks to that depth, and boom. This is what it looks like for a surface submarine, sitting duck. This is what an explosion looks like from the surface after it goes off underwater. That's going to come up. This is a depth charge here. Now, over time, they will develop different types of depth charges and so forth. And this is a good picture here showing a destroyer doing some sub hunting. Okay. So they know there's a sub underneath here, and they're just, they're launching these depth charges. Okay. And hopefully that'll do the trick. So I figure, probably want to see what that looks like in a video, don't you? Okay. I gotta go to YouTube. Sorry. I thought I had this video open. I have the rest of the videos open for the day, but bear with me. And where'd you go? There you are. Got walk. Okay. Now, if you read the comments on this video, they actually blew up a barge that was underwater, and they kind of overdid it. But that's what that black crap is coming out. Okay. So, guys, in conjunction with sonar by destroyers using depth charges, okay, we're also going to use radar from the air. Okay, this is a flying boat or a Catalina. Okay, we have different types of these planes, but now, obviously, guys, you only have enough fuel capacity, for, yeah, it's on there. Okay. For these things to go only so far out into the ocean looking for subs, okay? So the middle of the Atlantic is difficult to cover with these, okay? And the Germans exploited that. But this definitely helped on the British side and on the American side, looking for these submarines, okay? And so I have a little video on that that kind of discusses these Catalinas, which is pretty good.
But nanotechnology in the form of air-to-surface vessel radar was beginning to be utilized. By mid-1941, half of Coastal Command's patrol aircraft were thus equipped. Another effective long-range patrol flying boat entered the fight, the American PBY Catalina. One of its primary missions was to destroy surface U-boats transiting through the Bay of Biscay. But even long-range Catalinas operating from Britain, North America, and Iceland could not provide cover for convoys in the mid-Atlantic. This gap was fully exploited by U-boats using wolf pack tactics, which decimated the convoys. By the end of 1942, losses had doubled to 5.5 million tons, and over 1,000 ships sunk. Gradually, the gap was closed with the introduction and strength of very long-range Liberator aircraft. By 1943, the tide of war had turned against the U-boat, so that it was reduced from a predatory wolf to a hunted dog. The Battle of the Atlantic was arguably the single most important one of the war. Had the U-boats won, Britain would not have been able to sustain war against Germany. Leading the fight against the U-boat had been the anti-submarine airplane.
Okay, I know it's not the most exciting video, but pretty good. Gives you a good idea of what it took to win, the Battle of the Atlantic, okay? In the end, we will destroy over 785 German U-boats, okay? That's what this says right here, okay? So using both radar and sonar, we're able to find, seek, and destroy, to quote Metallica. And I gave you this number earlier, this 4,600 merchant ships. Okay, really good picture here of a convoy getting ready to head across the Atlantic. Okay, and we'd protect them, with those destroyers using sonar. This really helped. Okay, so by middle of 43, the Atlantic is not completely cleared, but much safer than it was a year before. So what's next? Okay, guys. Soon some of these ships are going to be carrying American troops over to England. Okay. And where we're going to put them into action is like, where are we going to first? Where are we going to start? Okay. Now, during 1942, guys, were we good there? We good? Okay. During 1942, you have to remember, the Battle of Stalingrad is going on. The Battle of Russia is going on. Okay. So Stalingrad, which is out here, all right, Hitler's throwing everything he has at it. Okay. Stalin's throwing everything he has at the Germans. What Stalin hopes the United States will do once we get in this war is reopen a front here. Now, I don't know why this map doesn't have England on it. Okay. You know England's right here. Okay. They want us to open a front here because if the U.S. comes across into France, this will alleviate pressure off of Russia because Hitler's going to have to deal with his western flank. Yes? But Churchill's like, hey, I know Stalin wants you to do that, but sending green American troops who have never seen combat across the English Channel into the teeth of the German army in France is a really bad idea. And he was right. I mean, Churchill's going to convince Roosevelt, you don't want to do that right now. We're not ready for that. Your troops need seasoning. They need to see action. You need to see your military equipment, how it works, how well it performs. We haven't seen this yet. So you need to test that out in what Churchill calls the soft underbelly of the beast, which will be the Mediterranean and North Africa here. Okay. Now, the lay of the land at this point, French Morocco. Remember, Vichy France, it's a puppet state. So the French are still there. Germans are really in charge. French Algiers. Tunisia and Libya controlled by the Italians, Mussolini. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, you get into Iran, Iraq, the British have very strong relations there and have a lot of troops in here. Okay? So, if the Germans can cut across the Suez Canal, win at Stalingrad, they can get in here and take control of the Middle East. Okay? So actually the first place we're going to see American troops hit the ground is in North Africa. But not till November 8th, 1942. Okay? So leading up to that, got the Battle of Stalingrad going on, okay? And the guy in charge of the German Africa Corps is a guy named General Erwin Rommel. Okay? Rommel is going to make a play for the Suez Canal. Meeting him be the head of the British 8th Army, General Bernard Montgomery. Now, military and historians, guys, love to talk about Erwin Rommel. He's one of the best World War II generals as far as his abilities go. Okay? Is it okay to give high praise to a German general during World War II, or is that not allowed? I mean, are we allowed to say good things about General Robert E. Lee during the Civil War? You know, I mean, like the kind of man he was, the kind of general he was, the kind of leader he was. I mean, are you allowed to talk about those things anymore? Understand this, guys. Rommel is a soldier. He's not some Hitler-loving, Jew-hating, Aryan supremacist guy. Okay? He's just not that guy. He's a soldier, and he's a good one. And we know what we're going to have to go up against in Rome, okay? So oftentimes military historians refer to Rommel, the Desert Fox, as shrewd, daring, resourceful, okay? Now, he had reached El Alamein here. Okay, you guys recognize the Nile River Delta here, yes? Okay, and then the Suez Canal. General Bernard Montgomery will be waiting on it, okay? Now, that's 70 miles. But the British know he's coming. And they're prepared for it. How did the British know they're coming? Because by this time, guys, the British had begun to break the German enigma, or the German code. Okay? The program, like our program to decipher the Japanese code, was called magic. The program to decipher the German code was called ultra. Some of you guys have probably seen a movie on this, hopefully, called Imitation Game. Yeah, there's two of them. Now, this is an excellent movie that focuses around a place called Bletchley Park. Outside of London, the British are going to gather their best minds, men and women, okay, to try and break this code machine. The main character in Imitation Game is a guy named Alan Turing, who is simply a genius, okay? He is going to build a computer to help decipher this code. Now, how many guys have heard of the Enigma before? Okay, you've heard of this, okay. This machine is brilliant, okay? Very difficult to break this machine, okay? Turing's going to figure out a way. Now, I have a little video on this. You would be better to watch the movie, okay? But there's a good Netflix series called Bletchley Park. I don't know if it's still up or not. My wife and I watched it. And it was about female code breakers from Bletchley Park in London. And after the war was over, you know, women sacrificed so much, you know, worldwide during the war, right? I mean, women had to do so much more than they had ever done before. And then when the war was over, men wanted them to just go back to what they were doing before, right? So this movie or this TV show called Bletchley Park or Home Fire, something like that. These women that were really smart code breakers after the war solved murders from clues from the newspaper and stuff, using their skills as code breakers. It's a pretty good show. The BBC does some really good programming. I don't know if you guys watch any BBC programs, but they have really good stuff, like the murder mysteries and stuff like that. My wife and I are watching one now. Yeah. So anyhow, okay. This is not a super exciting video, but it is interesting.
The German Secret Service units issued a code book which contained the settings for each day, which changed at midnight. All Enigma operators within their local network had to set their machines to the code setting for the day so that each of them could encode and decode letters and messages. Firstly, the operators chose 3 rotors from a box of 5. These rotors were all wired differently, and before placing them in the machine, the operators reset an inner wheel on the rotor to a marked position on the outer ring. They were then placed in the machine in the order indicated in the code book. Next, the rotors are set to the letters of the day. The next part of the procedure is the stecker board, which is indicated in the front of the machine. These steckers, which are plugs, are changed according to the code book again, and each plug will change one letter. For example, the letter A to the letter K. When the operator presses, let's say, the letter A, it sets up an electric current which runs through the machine, first through the stecker board, changing the letter each time it goes, then runs to the rear of the machine, first through the three rotors, hits a reflector plate, and comes back on a different path through the three rotors again, finally lighting a lamp at the rear of the machine, indicating another letter other than the one which was pressed. The Enigma machine cannot encode the letter that you press in the first instance. The remarkable thing about Enigma is that when you press a letter on the keyboard and the subsequent enciphered letter lights up to the rear of the machine, the chances of that letter lighting up are nearly 158 million to 1. Now, to put that into perspective, your chances of winning the British National Lottery are approximately 18 million to 1. It's a misconception that if you have an Enigma machine, you can break any Enigma messages. This, of course, is completely untrue. It's necessary to break the key setting for the day before you can understand an Enigma message.
So breaking the key setting is basically what Turing did. Reverse engineering messages to get to that, those three letters. Okay. Now this brings up a dilemma for the British and the Americans, because if we can decode their messages, that means we can stop their attacks or be prepared for their attacks when they come, yes? But if we show up every time they're going to do something to stop them, they're going to figure out that we've broken their code. We don't want them to know we've broken their code, do we? So that means, and I never really thought about this till I watched that movie, is that they're going to have to allow some attacks to take place. People will die so that they don't know we know their code. Does that make sense? And that's a dilemma for leadership. You know, I mean, you're going to have to make some tough calls here. Okay? And in fact, they will do that. I mean, they will allow certain things to happen so as the Germans not to know that we know their code. Okay, but I do recommend highly that movie. Now, you know how Hollywood does. They have an agenda usually behind everything. Alan Turing was gay. Okay, and so that a big part of the movie kind of goes about that. Now, the thing about being gay, before it was okay to be gay, is that you could be blackmailed. You know what I mean? Like, he's in a very high position of power. So if the Germans had figured out he was working on this and found out he was gay, then the Germans could say, hey, if you keep doing what you're doing, we're going to out you. And your career is going to be over. That sort of thing. You know what I mean? So it's kind of an interesting take, how they do the movie. But it's a good movie. Okay. Anything to add on that? Okay. All right. So we're going here. Now, meeting, as we said, Rommel be Montgomery. Okay. Monty. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about Monty over the next couple of weeks. Okay. I got a picture of him on the next slide. So at El Alamein, there's going to be a major desert battle between the Germans and the British, starting on October 23rd. So by November 4th, Montgomery will break through Rommel's army. Now, guys, desert warfare here is quite brutal. Rommel needs help. Rommel needs resupply. He needs tank parts. He needs more fuel. He will receive neither from Hitler, because Hitler is so focused on Stalingrad. Rommel will not receive the help he needs. So he's left a little bit shorthanded. So to describe how Rommel would, as a battlefield general, okay, Rommel was a pilot. So he would fly his own plane, scout enemy positions from the air, return to headquarters, draw out a plan of attack that he has scouted, and then lead that attack, not from the rear, from the safety 50 miles away, but he would lead that attack from the front. He would be there with his men, okay? A lot of generals don't do that, okay? So that's why Rommel received such high marks as a World War II general, okay? Similarly as Patton will, okay? I'll introduce you to George Patton later this week, okay? So what's going to start happening here, guys, is Montgomery, after defeating Rommel here, Rommel will begin a retreat west. And Montgomery and the British 8th Army will pursue. This is November 4th. On November 8th, American troops will land here, here, and here. Okay? On November 8th. So as Rommel is being pushed back this direction, the Americans will be landing here. So what you're going to see eventually is a pincer movement where we will pinch Rommel back here to Tunisia. Okay? Mostly the British are doing this. Now, we will not meet the Germans till we get to Tunisia. So when the Americans land at Casablanca, Oran, and Algiers, who will be the first enemy that we will have to fight? It won't be Germans. Not first. The French. When we land, this is French Morocco. This is French Algiers, where we land here. Okay? So we're going to fight against the French. Now, do the French want to fight against Americans? Are they told to by their German puppet masters? Yes. They won't last very long. You understand. The French will do what the French do. Which is what? Quit. They're going to quit. Okay? Now, Oran is a port city. You're going to see, there's going to be a couple of weeks. And then we will start to encounter some Italians. Do the Italians want to fight America? Not particularly. So what we do face here before we get to Tunisia is not, it's not nothing. Okay, I don't mean to diminish what our troops had to go through here, okay? But once we reach Tunisia, we will get our chance at the Germans. And it's not going to go well. The first major engagement between the United States and Germany will take place in a place called Kasserine Pass. And it will be one of the worst defeats of the war for the United States. We are going to get our butts handed to us. Like, we will retreat over 50 miles. Okay? This is when we put a real battlefield commander in charge. That's when Patton comes in. Okay? I'm going to save that for probably Wednesday. All right? We'll come back to it because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little. So let me show you on this next slide. Okay? First of all, this is Monty. He looks British. He's wearing the beanie thing there. Okay? Now, American generals don't really like Monty. I know he's on our side, but there's a lot of American generals that despise this man. Okay? This is Rommel. Okay, and I'm going to show you a short video here, just showing you what desert warfare looks like. Okay, it's like a 2-minute video, and you'll see Rommel in that. Okay, now let me go back. Oops. Okay, so up top here, the top map is Eastern North Africa. So here's El Alamein, November 5th, start to drop. The red is the Germans, the blue is the British. Okay, so November 7th, November 15th, December 16th, Christmas Day, January 19th, February 4th, push back into Tunisia. Okay, the Americans landing here, here, and here will begin our drive across the desert towards Tunisia. So you see the two sides converging. Yes? All right. Now, we cannot finish this battle yet because there's other things going on in the Pacific, okay, that we need to talk about before we get to 1943. This video doesn't have any words, it's just pictures and sounds. That's Rommel. I hate to give short shrift to, the Battle of North Africa. We will do a little bit more on that when we introduce when I talk about the Battle of Kasserine Pass. Okay. But before we move on, I just want to introduce this to you guys, okay, and talk about this, okay, before we get into it tomorrow. We will finish the end of Pearl Harbor tomorrow, show you how we respond to Pearl Harbor. But look at this, guys. This is the extent of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, okay? There are certain places on this map we cannot allow the Japanese to control. Remember, we have to keep our England in the Pacific open. And so we'll be talking about two major battles. The Battle of the Coral Sea, this is May of 42, and then the Battle of Midway, which is June of 42, okay? And then while we're down here in the Coral Sea, we'll also talk about Guadalcanal, the island that we're going to try and secure, okay? So, guys, we can't bring our Navy in here without risking our Navy. Okay, so it's going to be difficult to strike back at Japan for Pearl Harbor. It's going to be hard to punch back. We're going to figure out a way to do that. That's what we'll watch tomorrow at the end of Pearl Harbor. Okay. Sound good? All right.